recording. So the recording is underway now, and we are started. We're on units 21 and 22 this week. 21's looking at cryptography, public key cryptography, and 22 is going to look at endpoint protection. We may get through this a little bit quicker today. We'll wait and see. Let me get back to where I am to here. Okay. I hope y'all all did have a good break last week. Mine was good, but it was busy. I worked on installing a computer at a church. And hit a few little complications on that one because I was replacing a computer, but their other one died before I got there. So we were having to build from scratch. However, I got it networked better than it had been before. So now, not only does the office use the copier as a printer, but the minister from his computer can print to the copier also, which is their printer. So they've got a copier printer. I still got one more to put in this Saturday for their sound system. But hopefully that one will keep working okay up until then. The other one had problems, which is why they hired me to do that. Saturday, I walked and ran in the Charleston Cooper River Bridge run walk and did that Saturday morning. Wasn't quite as good a shape as I would like to be when I do a 10K. And actually we did close to 10 miles with how far back we were in the line, a friend and I that did it. And then the distance we walked afterwards, and then catching the buses back and forth across the river. So it was neat and interesting. And then I'm back at school this week. I am doing this from home again this morning. As y'all have said, it works a lot better from home. Afternoons seem to work okay from school, but in the morning, apparently with the amount of usage of the internet in the morning, because afternoons it's not used quite as much as it is in the mornings at the college. The classes that meet on campus tend to be more morning, and then some of the faculty disappear in the afternoon, etc., and have meetings, etc., to go to, and so they're not on you doing as much either. So that's probably a factor in it. But so I am doing it from here. I see somebody else joined in. It looks like yes. Let me get that marked there. So that's that. Registration for summer continues. If you have not registered for summer, you need to as soon as possible. One reason for going ahead and getting registered is that somewhere in the next few weeks, we will be looking at enrollment in classes and be dropping classes, expanding classes as needed. And if you haven't registered for it, we may drop a class that you need because there wasn't any others in it, and that we do look at that as part of it, of the people that are in them. So definitely you need to get registered for summer if you have not already. I know some of you are registered for summer, some of you I don't know on. Beyond that, next week, we will have to move this session to Wednesday. So we'll be meeting Wednesday next week, not Tuesday. I have Leadership Walker all day next Tuesday, so we'll have to shift it for that. And I believe I'm visiting education facilities with the group that I'm in. Beyond that, Thursday, that only affects the other class. It doesn't really affect y'all. So I am on Wednesdays and Thursdays this week and next week, also out doing cabling labs for 2451. And I'll have to work around that. I'm taking the Security Plus test on Thursday, which I've had people tell me is just basic type stuff on the latest version, and that they really didn't expect me to do anything on it. Mine actually doesn't expire until they last for 3 years. I believe it renewed in November when I passed a higher test then. I know it did renew last August, which would put it through August of 24, but I think whatever I took in the fall renewed me through um, November of 24. So in any event, I'm good through August of 24 at least. And if I pass the test on Thursday, because I've got a voucher from CompTIA for it for some training I did, um, then that doesn't add 3 years onto it. You would think it did, since they say that they're good for 3 years. And then if you have to do recertification requirements, and they'll renew it for 3 more years. Well, if you do their continuing ed stuff and pay them $150 a year, I think it is, then when you complete those hours, that it does extend 3 years from the end. But if you do it by the other way of renewing it, by passing the exam again or by passing a higher level exam, then it doesn't do it 3 years from the end. It does it 3 years from the date that you did that on, which doesn't make sense to me yet, that they ought to be both the same. But I guess their fear is people, like in my case of taking tests several times in a year that are higher level, that might end up with a 9-year extension. But I think they could be able to rule around that one on there. So it doesn't give me my full renewal on it. Because they could put a rule that it can't extend more than 3 years out from when the last full one expired. In any event, we are in, so we were working on 21 and 22 this week. And then we're headed towards the end. So, and grading wise, I'm not that much behind on grading. I am grading what was due 2 weeks ago Monday, which was actually the last month, the last week we had stuff due, because nothing was due last week. I'm partly through that one, most of the way through it. Almost everybody is graded on that. And 2 other classes, I still got a fair number of students on the assignment that was due that day to grade. And then in most of my classes turned in a pile of stuff last night, and I have not looked at that this morning yet. So hopefully I can make substantial progress in the next couple of days as I float campus to campus. All right. And I'm looking real quick at my emails. And that and don't see anything I need to deal with at the moment. Okay, so let's look at chapter 21, looking at public key cryptography. What you're looking at is that how you can go in and using public key, using a key, go in and encrypt your data, and that you got to have a key for it. And so they're talking about that on it and talking the public key ones in this. They mentioned briefly about encryption is nothing new. People have been using that for tons of time, and that's been going on. So that they're talking about securing our communications. So we're encrypting it both for at rest, wherever we're storing it, and in transit when we're sending it from place to place. So you're talking about encrypting communications in terms of sending it. So one of the things is that by encrypting it, you're ensuring your data integrity, making sure nothing changed on it. And that they mention about several different hash algorithms we can use to determine is the integrity there? Did it arrive like it was sent? Origin authentication, that's knowing where did it come from, making sure we know where it came from. And there's hashes can be done on that. Data confidentiality, by encrypting it, nobody else can read it. So that takes care of confidentiality. And then data non-repudiation says that that the sender can't repudiate or refute the validity of the message sent. That when the sender sends it, that then by encrypting it, that they've made sure that they've said that this, what you get is what they did send. So that's what the non-repudiation is that what was sent is what you received is really what was sent. So they talk about hash functions. What the hash function does is that you take a message, run it through a hash function, and it comes up with a number related to it. Now, it didn't change the data at all. It just came up with a number related to it. And that's the hash. And then, so you normally do that on one end, include the hash value, send it, and then on the other end, they will do the same calculation again using the same hash function on the data. And if they come up with the same hash value, that same hash number, then that is considered to have arrived with full integrity and that it was not damaged in process. Because if anything got changed, that hash number is going to change. So it's a real easy way to determine whether anything was changed. So they go through and show you some on that one. Talk about MD5 and SHA. MD5 was the way used for a long time, but MD5 is not a very secure and a very good one anymore, and it's strongly suggested that you don't use MD5 now. But if you don't have anything else, it's still a good one. SHA is the recommended one now, and it's recommended you use SHA2 or 3. One was similar to MD5. SHA was developed by the National Security Agency, and so SH2 uses a 224-bit key on it, and SH3 uses a 200 and SHA3 uses a 256 or a 384-bit and could even use a 512-bit key. The longer the key, the more secure it is. MD5 only used 128-bit, so you can see how much longer we're getting. Then they talk a tiny bit about origin authentication. That goes back with the hashing actually will do on it, and that you can agree to a secret key and then use that to do your hashing on it. And so they've reached a key on that. Then they talk some about data confidentiality. There's symmetric encryption and there's asymmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption says we use the same key to encrypt and decrypt data. Asymmetric encryption, if you put the A in front, says we use two different ways to do it. Asymmetric says we use a public key and a private key. And what that is whoever is encrypting it has a key that they use to encrypt it, which can actually also decrypt it. But there is a separate key that's a public key, which is what they give out to whoever's going to be receiving this, and that they get the public key. And with the public key, that it's using a different key to encrypt and decrypt. And so the public key is one that is distributed out there, but it won't let you actually decrypt data that has been sent back that's been encrypted using a public key. So you'll see asymmetric used normally on it. HTTPS uses asymmetric. So they go through and give you a little bit of talk about symmetric. With symmetric, the requirement is you have to share a key and then you encrypt, and then the other end has that key to decrypt. Problem with symmetric is that if somebody steals the key, they can get into any of that data. And so that can be a problem on that. With VPN traffic, you may well use symmetric encryption, but for other stuff, no, you're not going to use. So they talk about several approaches on that one. Then they talk about asymmetric encryption. There's one key used to encrypt it, and then there's another key used to decrypt it. So you would give out to any place that's going to need to be decrypting the data. You'll give them the decryption key, but and actually you'll give them the encryption key, because when they go send you the encrypted data, that they've got to have the public key to encrypt it, and then you have the private key that will allow you to decrypt it. So you encrypt it with a public key, and then you use a private key to decrypt it. So if you're going to send information to your bank, you're going to use a public-private key approach. With the asymmetric approach, the bank will give you a public key that you can encrypt the data and send it to them. Now, nobody can steal it along the way. And then when the bank gets it, they use their private key to decrypt it. So they talk about several on that. SSL, it mentions, and TLS. SSL was the way that it was done. TLS is where you're going to find it now on with this. Instead of using secure socket layer, you're using transport layer security. And then they mention about IKE, which deals with your IPsec VPNs, and secure shell, which allows you to have a secure remote access connection to a network device. And then Pretty Good Privacy has been around a long time, and that's a program that does your cryptography, privacy, and authentication. And it's used mainly in email communications now, but it's been around, I'm guessing, since the 90s and maybe before, but it's been there a long time and still used on things that they have improved it along the way, and it's actually an open source approach. So you'll see Pretty Good Privacy mentioned at times and has been used for a lot of different things. Let me make sure y'all didn't bounce anything in here on me, because I'm on single screen, so I have to bounce back and forth to see stuff. So then they talk about the encryption algorithms. Diffie-Hellman is a common one, which is DH. But Diffie-Hellman you'll see often used, and you both agree it's a asymmetric, and that it uses a key that you can both use to encrypt messages sent to each other, and then that it raises numbers to powers and comes up with stuff. So it's one used out there. DSA, Digital Signature Standard, an algorithm. You'll see those used some. Rivest, Shamir, and Alderman. You don't see them mentioned, or you see that those algorithms, which is referred to as RSA, you'll see that mentioned some. The L-Gamma that they mention, I've not really seen that one mentioned much. And then that you can use that elliptic curve technique to make it the above ones even more. So they talk about confidentiality some, and that is in terms of public key and such on it. So if two computers are going to communicate and they need to encrypt on it, computer 1, which in their example is Alice, asks for a public key, and the Bob gives a public key back to Alice. So now Alice can encrypt the data and send it to Bob, and Bob will have the private key that allows Bob to decrypt it. And then they go in and talk about Diffie-Hellman for a little bit on you, so do be aware of that one. It is using an IPsec VPN, and it's using SSH in the process. And so it switches the things and everything gets there. So they go through and demonstrate that one to you. Then in they talk about digital signatures. Digital signatures are using a mathematical formula on it to assure the integrity on it. Y'all are seeing, we are all seeing, more use of digital signatures now. In some cases, I'm not sure how secure those are. In some cases, I don't think they're really a digital signature. They're just having you type in the name and claiming that is a digital signature. A real digital signature has been authenticated, and it's not changeable, and that the person that's using it has to log in to use it each time. Adobe does use digital signatures, and that you'll see it used in some other places also. And that code can also be signed with digital signatures to show that it really does belong to whatever organization did actually create it. So then they take you through that. And then in chapter 22, they're going to talk their way through endpoint protection. And endpoint protection is how are we protecting our devices that are at the ends of our network. That would be your PC, your laptop, like I'm sitting here working on, your phone, etc. So that's what they're covering in this one. So a lot of what's in 22 you already know. So there are a couple of things that they're going with is that they're going to talk about anti-malware protection. And then they're going to talk a little bit about IPS, IDS login devices and those logs. And then they'll mention that you can use a sandbox to analyze malware also, which is where you set yourself a secure area that you can explore things in without hurting other stuff. So endpoint threats, they mentioned those for a moment to you. They mentioned that the highest thing is actually spam out there. And they talk about how much it contains of different types of things in it. And so they talk about your endpoint security on it. And they mentioned some things to you again. DOS attacks are mentioned again. Remember, with a DOS attack, that's a denial of service. That's where you're trying to lock up their network or their device so that the public can't access it. And then they mentioned that you could have breaches of your web server to mess up the web presence, or you could have breaches of your data servers to steal data or mess up data. The endpoints, they again define to you what I just told you. Network infrastructures, all the things connecting it all together. So this one we're looking at endpoints. So they talk about antivirus, anti-malware software. There's a lot of ones out there that are used. They may be signature approached, but they may well use signature approach. Some of the your antivirus programs generally aren't using signatures as their main method anymore, although they do have signatures still in there of the different type viruses. But the other approaches is the way they're really doing most of their checking nowadays. A lot of your Anti-spyware programs are still using signature-based. Signature-based is what was originally used. The problem with signature-based is it only can recognize malware that it knows about. So you have to constantly update those, and when a new one comes out, it's not going to know about it until it gets the new signature from the company that creates that malware, knowing that malware exists. Heuristic based is that it looks at the general features of different malware, and it's seen all of those. So now when it looks at programs coming through, things coming through, it looks at them and sees, does it have things in it that looks like other malware it's caught before. Back in 2000, we were first moving to heuristic approach and from signature-based approach. McAfee was still signature-based approach. Norton had moved to heuristic-based approach, and they just moved to that like months before. And I Love You virus came out. I was at Athens Tech then, which used McAfee. Now, I will state, like you've heard from me before, I'm not a big fan of McAfee, and this is one of the reasons for it. I had an extra copy of Norton because I had been using Norton for a number of years. Prior to that, I had used IBM antivirus, which Norton bought out and merged into theirs and made a much better product at that point. So I stuck it on my school computer. Well, I Love You came out, and I Love You was a virus that came out back in 2000, I think it was. It was 2000, 2001. And it sent an email to you that said, I love you, and had an attachment. And if you open the attachment, it was a Visual Basic script that proceeded to go through your computer and delete every picture on your computer. So it deleted all the JPEG, PNG, etc. files on your computer. And I mean delete them. It permanently deleted them. It didn't just do a delete, it erased them literally off your drive. So that morning I came in, looked in my email, opened it up, and went and saw an email from this teacher at another school. And I went, and it said, I love you. And I went, that's odd. And about then, Norton popped up and said, you got an email that is suspicious. We don't know what it is, but it looks suspicious, something suspicious in it. And so it quarantined the attachment. And I was going, no, I wasn't going to open the attachment anyway, because I'm going, this person would have never sent me an email that said, I love you, because that was completely off the realm of anything. Other people opened it up all through the school, and it proceeded to wipe out their machines, and it would mail itself to everybody in their address book. So you got massive numbers of these I love yous from everybody under the sun. We were a loving world that morning, and wiping out everyone's pictures. Well, the school shut off the internet connection immediately, trying to block it. I didn't lose anything in the process because Norton stopped it. A few hours later, after they gave us an attachment back to the internet and they had put blocks on it, Norton came and sent me a message saying it needed to update Norton antivirus. I did. And then at that point, it went, that suspicious one you had that we quarantined is I love you. And it gave me the option to delete it. I actually still have it on my computer today because it's just a short little Visual Basic script that somebody had written and sent out. And I don't know if they really had intended it to, I don't think they had intended it from things I read later to go all over. They were just going to mess with a couple of their friends' computers or people that were their friends. And it just went out of control. And that happens sometimes. So that's the heuristic one. The behavioral based one works like the heuristic, but the heuristic one's looking at general features shared by the different malware. So it had seen the attachment that was Visual Basic, and then it looked at some things written in the Visual Basic and said, ooh, that just doesn't look good. Behavioral based is working the same type way, and that it looks at the suspicious behavior and sees if it looks like the other things and looks on those. So those are that. Um, so antivirus, anti-malware software, I would strongly encourage you to use to have an antivirus program in addition to Windows Defender. I have not been impressed with Windows Defender. I've seen it catch one thing only ever. Um, and I know some people like Windows Defender. McAfee, again, I've seen too many things get by it. So I'm not real big on it, although I know people do like it. But the big thing is they give you a 30-day free trial of a new computer or new version of Windows. Norton, I have liked all along, but I will tell you this too. They had some bad copies of it come out, which they fixed immediately and updated again. My problem with Norton is it cost. I'm using Avast currently, the free version, and it seems to do a real good job for me. I also use Malwarebytes, they've got a ransomware betaware that they did a few years ago that seems to work good. That's now included in Malwarebytes, and actually the other antivirus programs include a similar thing in theirs nowadays. Um, Malwarebytes, as far as the regular program, my problem with it is you can get a free version, but if you get the free version, you're back in the 1990s. It does not check on anything except when you run a full scan, which is the way original antivirus software ran. The paid version uses the heuristic and behavioral based on it. Um, so that's that one. I will note this also, the federal government in the last week while we were on break, put Kaspersky on a watch list saying that it's Russian controlled and that they thought the Russians were doing some stuff through it because of the Ukrainian war and stuff. And the government, I think it was NSA, is recommending that you, and the FBI is recommending you do not use Kaspersky. I've not ever used it, so I don't know. They did talk about firewalls, the host-based firewall, which the Windows firewall is their example they show you. That's a good basic firewall. You can also get security suites or other paid firewalls from other places. Avast, if I bought their paid version of Avast, would include Avast firewall, which is supposed to be good, but I've not ever used. I also do use Super Anti-Spyware. Super Antivirus is a bad product and will mess your machine up. It's a different company. But Super Anti-Spyware has been real good for me on keeping spyware cleaned off my machine and some and actually does touch some viruses. The antivirus programs will tell you they take care of spyware also, but my experience is they don't do very well on that, but they do well on the viruses. The anti-spyware programs do well on taking care of spyware, and there's several others out there. I've used a couple others in the past. I can't remember their names because I've been using Super Anti-Spyware for so long now. The free version of it works great. The only thing it does is it pops up some little messages for you occasionally, and there's some type of scan it does not normally do on the free, but it does monitor all the time and everything on it. But you can buy it for like $10 for a lifetime license for up to 5 machines. So actually on my machine, I've got the professional version running on this machine. On my phone, I've got Avast running on it too, the free version again. So then they talk about security suites, and that those include several things in them. So that's a good one to use on there. So they talk about then things you can set up for doing it, that you've got advanced malware protection or AMP, and that it sets up a way to stop on the stuff. You've got email security appliances that you'd use on your email server that will clear things off there. Ones that you can also use for protecting your web server and so on. So they've got a variety of those. The next generation firewalls are the more advanced firewalls. They're standalone firewalls as a general rule. I think they all are, but they could have changed. And those are ones that can do all types of checking on stuff. I don't like the name next generation firewall because what happens when you get the next generation? And that's thunder. Apparently, we've got a thunderstorm going through Lafayette right now. We are under bad threat today. So then they talk about a few other things on this. Host-based firewalls, I've already mentioned to you. The Windows Defender one is a good one. And about ways that those protect on you. IPS and IDS, they do mention some to you. And the IDS ones are merely detecting, they are not removing things. So they just watch things. IPSs actually will protect your equipment for you. And I thought they told us back at the beginning they were going to talk about those. Yes, they did. So the IPS actually stops things and removes things. It's actively doing protection. IDS is just a detection. It's not a protection. It's detection. And keep those two straight on it. So you'll use IDS to just monitor a system, and then you watch the log entries to see what's going on, and it will send you log entries about this looks suspicious and that, and so you can go in and do things. But you got to realize it's not going to do anything on its own. That basically is chapters 21 and 22 today. Any questions for me? Oh. And I really suspect in 22, certain amount of 22 you already know from a variety of reasons, from experience and from some other classes. 21 may have been a little bit newer stuff for you. Now, it looks like I still got everybody marked here. So if there's not any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and let y'all go. I will be working on grading on through today, and I'll try to get as close to caught up as I can, and then continue to make sure y'all are doing your work, and the test should be out there. I know that there is no test this week, if I'm remembering right now. I get classes mixed up. Sorry about that. And so there is no test this week for you. You've got an assignment in module 21, but you do not have one in 22. So that's good news for you. What was due yesterday was just the test on 18 to 20. So that's it. So next Tuesday, we'll move to Wednesday for the session. I will be off campus all day and will not be online. Thursday, I'm taking Security Plus in the morning, and then heading to, I think, Rome to meet with students to do their cabling. So I probably won't be on email until after lunch that day. So I think that's all the updating, and we're under an hour today. So unless some questions have popped in here, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I don't see any others. I hope that helped y'all some. Have y'all got any questions on anything else? Because I'm not, when I ask for questions, questions aren't just about what we're talking about that day, but can be questions on previous units or anything else that I'll be glad to answer those also. This should be your chance to talk with Dr. Watt, along with my chance that I get to talk to the group of y'all. And so y'all can ask me questions. I'm not seeing any pop in, but if y'all do have any, there's two different averages in Blackboard. I've set it up that way because when I've used one or the other, some students get confused on it. The one that is weighted total, and that should be the one at the beginning or at the top of the list for you. Let me double check that I've got this correct, what I'm telling you. Yeah, the weighted total one, which is at the beginning of the list. That one is working like points in a game. Every time y'all do something, it gets graded. It will add points to that number. So that number is growing all semester long. Okay, and everything's got a values to it, and it keeps growing. So as y'all get more stuff done, it adds more points to it. Then, and so that number, once you get to a 70 on it, you know you got a C. It gets to an 80, you know you got a B. So you get to a 70. If you're satisfied with a C, you can quit at that point on the weighted total. Or you can keep on working to get yourself to an 80 to get a B and to a 90 to get an A. Hopefully y'all are all aiming to get the A's. Then at the bottom of the list, as y'all see, the grade book is over to the right as I see the grade book. There's an average there also. That is purely an average of the things that you have done and been graded. So of the things you have grades in the grade book of, it's averaging those. However, things that have not been done aren't weighting in on that. So you're going to see a whole lot bigger number over there, and that's the average of what you've done and been graded. And in this class of the test grades that have been moved over to Blackboard. The one at the beginning is going to be counting, what it's doing is it's counting everything that's not been done yet as a 0, that we don't have a grade in there yet. When we get to the very end, they will come to both the same number. The problems I've had with both of them is, the first one, it's like playing a game, and most of y'all know that one, that you've played games and your object in the games get 70,000 points and get to go to level 2. Well, in this class, on that point basis, working the same way, when you get 70, you got a C in the class, so you know you passed it. Okay? Except that you have to do those final requirements, that you do have to do the final exam. I didn't say you have to pass it, you have to do it. And that you have to do the course feedback for Cisco. If you don't do those, you'll get an F in the class. Anyway, but that one, it always looks like a real low score to students, so some students get discouraged looking at that number. The one at the end, I've had students that came in, did the first 2 assignments, and did nothing else all semester. It showed that they had a 95 average because they made a 90 on one assignment and 100 on the other. And then the end of the semester hits and they flunk the class and they go, how did I fail the class? I had a 95 average all semester. You had a 95 average on 2 assignments and didn't do anything else. And how in the world they thought they would have passed the class not doing anything else, I don't know, but I get them occasionally. So that's why I've got both ways on there, whichever one makes the most sense to you. Did that answer your question, Maya? So they're both showing your grades, okay? Showing your average. There's 2 different ways of doing it. And look at the one that makes the most sense to you and use it. But for most of y'all, I think the point one will make sense to you because almost all of you have played games and understand the point approach. So that's also called gamification. It's making the course look like a game. All right, any other questions for me? That was a good question. And that's one that does confuse students, and I try to explain every semester, and still usually another explanation never hurts. All right, if there's no other questions, I'm going to stop the recording. I will try to transfer these recordings in just a little bit, get them downloaded, uploaded, and a link put into Blackboard.